So welcome to this session. It's called Unboxing What's New in Q2. We'll spend a bit of time looking at what Postman has released in the last quarter, and we'll even be going a little bit further back as well, because there's a few features that I really wanted you all to know about. My name is Alemi. I'm a senior developer advocate at Postman. And if you want to be aware of any Postman features before everyone, you can follow me on Twitter at Alemi. And I'm here with Joyce. Joyce,
Hi.
Who are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joyce. I'm the head of developer relations for Postman, and I'm based in San Francisco. And I just tweeted about an upcoming event that hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about a little bit later.
Cool. What are we going to do today? So we're going to talk about new features, but before jumping into the new features, we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So we'll talk about the API platform landscape, where Postman fits into that and the different features that Postman already offers. And then you'll be able to kind of fit the new features that we're talking about into these buckets. We then kind of look at what is API first, because that's also going to be one of the topic of the webinar today. And then we'll jump into a live demo. I think that's probably the best way to kind of know what these features are for and how they're being used. So I've kind of created a little scenario where you create an API and we do some things with it, and then you should be able to see most of the features. Before we end, we'll share some resources for you to learn more, or like to get more information about upcoming features. And as I mentioned before, we'll have a Q&A session. So let's start with the you. Who are you? What do you know about
Me?
Postman?
Oh, you mean the people watching? Okay, got it.
People in general.
Okay.
I'm going to prompt a little poll that should show on your screen right now. So you can go ahead and answer. I'll give you a minute. It's two simple questions. Firstly, what do you do? What's your role? Maybe you're a developer, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you work in quality testing, which seems to be the main thing so far. Maybe it's just other, and in that case, hopefully we still have some content for you. The second question is, how much experience do you have with Postman? That's going to help us making sure that we start with the right level of understanding about Postman when we talk about these features. So let's give it another second. Okay, so and the poll. Mostly we see quality and testing, which is probably the main type of people that are using Postman for 67%. Developer managers, and we have a couple of others. And then we actually have, surprisingly, a lot of people between the 1 to 3 years of experience with Postman, which is interesting. We usually have like more like newer people to our webinars, so this one seems to be like attracting people that have been using Postman for longer. So maybe it's going to be nothing new for you.
No. This is all new, to be clear.
In that case, yeah, cool. Okay, so that's good. Let's jump into first the API platform landscape. If you don't know, Postman is the API platform. So why do we call it the API platform? Because it does many things in the API world. So you can fit Postman in every single step of the API lifecycle. So talking about design, mock-in, testing, documentation, monitoring. It's used for collaboration, governance, but as you can see on that graph or in that schema, I don't know how that's called, you can see a bunch of stuff that are connecting to it. And that's going to be one of the things that we're going to demo today is all these integrations that Postman allows. So Postman is not here to be your cloud platform. It's not here to be your CI/CD, but it integrates with all of these other tools. And we demo some of them that we've added recently in the last couple of quarters, or like source code repository, etc. So that's our view of the API platform landscape. I think we have a blog post about that if you want to learn more. But with that said, let's jump into the next thing, which is API first. For those of you who are not familiar with API first, we define API first as defining and designing APIs and schemas before beginning development. So it's not starting to code and then putting an API on top of your code. It's discussing who's going to use your API, what they'll need, who's creating the API, what they need to provide. And then once you have that, you can get into these other phases. So if we look into it that way, too much. So you start with the design, and you can mock and write tests. Then you can move on to code generation, deploy, etc. But you start with the API design, and that's also something that we're going to talk a lot about today. And the demo is actually going to start with an API definition. So for those of you who are not really familiar with that, get into the mindset of API first. We start with this API definition, and then we move down the API lifecycle, and we'll show some other features. Do you think I'm clear enough, Joyce? Do you think we're ready to move on to the demo?
I think you're clear. The API first thing is something that is a common thread throughout a lot of our Space Camp learning sessions. So if this is like very new to you, don't worry about it. We have a lot of opportunities to get our hands wet with API first, but this is, does inform the engineering roadmap. So you'll be seeing that in a little bit.
Cool. So if that's all good, I'd say we get started with the new features walkthrough. As I mentioned, it's going to be a walkthrough, so there's a bit of a story behind it. Some features are not going to be new, but I'll sprinkle a bit of new features here and there, and I'm going to call them out. I'm not expecting you to just figure out, oh, this is new, or this is not new, because some of the stuff that I'm going to show may be new to you, but hasn't been released in the last couple of quarters. So let's start with Postman. So I'm in my Postman account. I'm already logged in. So if you logged in on your end, you're probably seeing something similar, which is your homepage with a bunch of information here. This homepage is not new, so I'm not going to spend too much time in there. But let's find this workspace that we're going to be working on today. So I'm going to go to the top here and search. If you've played with the search before, it used to be a lot of things, single-lined items. So now it is actually sorted by folders, etc. So for example, if I search for what's new, which is that public workspace that I'm going to work on today, you can see I have a different one, which is called, which is Cisco's Meraki public workspace. And I'm assuming they have some stuff about what's new in there. But you're actually able to identify straight away that this workspace has two collections that are related. And if I look for Postman, the same way I can see the Postman public workspace has two collections that are talking about Postman, an API that is talking about Postman, and this whole organization in folders is new, and that allows you to better know what belongs to what. And for example, if you're looking for Postman stuff, well, you know that this is the Postman account and this is Postman official content. So let me go back to what's new. And if you're doing the same thing, you should be able to do the same. So search for what's new, and the first result is going to be what's new in Postman. From Postman Dev, and you can click on it and access the workspace.
I almost exclusively rely on the search to find what I'm looking for, either in public or in my own team. The search team has done a lot of optimizations there, so that's a nice enhancement. Yeah,
so that's one of the things I didn't mention, but you are able to filter here from only your team, only public stuff, all of Postman. And I can already see some people that are joining here.
Oh.
Which is another feature we have, which is real-time activity. So if anyone's joining my workspace,
let me go meet you there.
So I can see Jim, which is probably somewhere around here, and yeah, I can see him in the chat. And we have, obviously, if your public is not profiled, we're not going to be able to see your name, and it's going to be just showing some random names. So here, Anonymous Andromeda, for example. Let's see if we get Joyce to join. Oh, we have more now. So we have Joyce who joined. We have Giancarlo. So yeah, another new feature. If you're doing anything, so especially me as a producer, someone who creates collection folders to use, we have quite a few workspaces where we have this type of stuff, and it's very good to see all of these people are coming to our workspaces to use them. One of the workspaces that I'm going to talk at the end is Postman Answers, where we offer pre-made collections for solutions in Postman, and there's always tons of people visiting this workspace. Okay. Also have Terry. Okay, I'm going to move on from this one. So you're in Postman now. It's an empty workspace. There's a bit of information. If you want it from now, if you want to do the same thing in your account, go in Workspaces, create a new one, or move to one that you already have, and you'll be able to do the same. But don't try to do it in this one, because this one is only on my team, so you won't be able to do any changes. So let's start with an API. I mentioned at the start API first. We start with an API definition. So I'll create a new API. And for the demo today, I'm using a Tarot API. Tarot?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't pronounce the T. That's what we do in French, not in English. So Tarot API. That's going to be another one that's going to get me. Give it a version. I just want to point out this thing here, which allowed me to import from different either source code repository, GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, Azure repos, but also if I had something deployed on AWS API Gateway, I could also import it from there. That's new. And this one only does an import, so I'm not going to go through that because I want to show you the sync with this repository. So I'm going to keep on going, just create that blank API. And once it's created, I can navigate to my API already. And you can see this button here, which is connect repository. And that's another thing that we mentioned when we talked about the platform, the API platform landscape. It's integration with source code repository. So I'll go ahead. I have created already a repository on my GitHub organization that I'm going to link with. So I'm authorized on GitHub. I'll search for my organization, select the repository, Postman what's new, which is here, and then define main branch. If you're familiar with like Git or source code repository, this shouldn't be new for you, but here I'm defining the branch where I'm going to kind of do my development, and then whenever it's ready, I can push to the main branch, so it's available to everyone. I already have a folder in here with my OpenAPI definition, so I'm going to select it. And I don't have a folder for my collections, so I'll leave it to for Postman to create the directory. Okay, so now I can navigate to my definition, and you can see it already pulled the definition from GitHub. I can also see there's a little orange dot here, which means there are changes. So I'll go ahead and do a commit and push, and it's going to tell me, well, there's changes in the repository you haven't pulled. So let's pull first. I'm going to use my tarot.yaml the changes, and then I'm good to go. Okay, so if you've worked with the API builder before, that should look familiar. Nothing brand new here. You have your API definition. You have your path to the left, so you can jump to the cards endpoint. You can jump to cards/random endpoint. One thing that is new, though, that we've added is documentation. So you could do documentation in Postman for like many years and generate collections, but this one is schema or API definition backed documentation. And it's automatically there just based on your definition. You can just switch to the documentation tab and see the same thing. So you're not going to get code generation, etc. That's not, this one is very much for the API producer side. So I can see my different endpoints again, and I could also navigate to them. I think we have a little naming problem here, but then you can see the parameters, what type is expected, etc. And this one is real time. So when in the collection side, you have to regenerate every time. Here, if I go here and change the title, start commenting API and save, this is going to be reflected here directly. One thing I forgot to mention, the definition I'm using here is OpenAPI 3.0. We've added support for OpenAPI 3.1. So if you're doing anything with API, OpenAPI 3.1, you might be interested in that. I think we have a link to a blog we can post in the chat regarding the newly added support for OpenAPI 3.1. So if someone wouldn't mind dropping it, that would be nice.
Let's just recap, because you went over connecting the GitHub repository, and then you went over the documentation differences. So when you're connecting the repository, you created a blank API and then pointed to your GitHub repo that you'd already created, where you had a schema.
Yep.
And then you pulled that schema into Postman. So now you have the ability to push changes, and you have the ability to pull changes from GitHub or source control if you want to.
Yeah, and you can actually see now again, I have this little orange dot, and it tells me I have changes. So I can go ahead, and the change is that I've added API in the name. So I can go in here, say I've updated name, and push these changes.
So Atul Chandran had this question, and hopefully this answers your question. But once you have that connection with source control set up, you have to take action. It's not an automatic sync. You can either explicitly pull changes, or you can explicitly commit and push changes to your remote.
Yeah, this is a real Git workflow. You need to be explicitly saying what you're going to do in a commit message, and then you have the different branches. So for now, I'm working on the development branch. You can see here. Once I'm ready for prod, I can switch here and move to the main branch and push my changes there. Okay, so we kind of looked at the integration with source code repository. We looked at the documentation. One of the things I mentioned, yeah.
In the documentation, I thought that was really interesting too, because when I first saw it, I was like, well, how is this different than the collection documentation? So you're saying it's the schema documentation. So it's going to focus a lot more on stuff that's important to the API producer, like the data types and stuff like that. And it won't have stuff like code gen for front end or for client side code for that would be typically that you would see on the collection documentation. That's
very much when we mentioned the API first is designing beforehand, right? That's what you would use. That view is very useful for you because you can see the different endpoints, you can see how they're being used, but you're not really in that consuming side of things. You don't want to use that API yet. But talking about this, we have the API lifecycle, and there's many steps to the API lifecycle. But a few of them that we saw in the API platform landscape were testing, deployment, and monitoring. And if you notice something here, we actually have these same steps here highlighted in the API builder. So test is not new. We have more integrations here that you can add. So SQL CI, Jenkins, Travis CI. If you're doing anything in your CI/CD with these, you are now able to connect them directly in Postman and see the results from the pipeline execution directly in Postman. Deployments, we've also added something here which allows you to deploy an API directly from Postman to the AWS API gateway. I think we released that a couple of months back, and ideally we'll have more coming there. I'm not going to demo that, and same reason why I'm not demoing these ones. I'm in a public workspace, which means if I set some credentials here, you'll have access to them. And I'd rather not share my AWS API credentials with you. But yeah, it's there. One thing I will be talking about a bit more is monitoring. So there's a few things here. Collection-based monitors is not new. It's something that you may have used before. I'm going to create one just so you can see how it works. I'll create a new collection, which I'm going to call API. Generate it. Monitor. There's no environment. I'll run it every day, and I'll get my notifications here. So what this does, this creates a monitor that is going to run my collection every day at 4 p.m. So now I can see it here. I could run it manually, and you would see it worked. Nothing failed. It's all good. But we have this new type of monitor called uptime monitors. So one of the way the typical collection-based monitors are used for, you add some tests, and you might want to test that the response takes less than a certain amount of time, that the response contains a specific item or JSON schema. But uptime monitor does only one thing. It checks that your API is up. And that's still in beta, but we can start playing with it. So I'm going to go back to monitors here, and I'll create a new one. So when you're in that view to create a monitor, on the right-hand side now, you have this little box to create an uptime monitor. And it says it here. It's just so you know when your service is down. So I can go ahead. I'm going to use, what URL should I use?
Use like.meowsergirl.com.
Meowsergirl.com?
Yes, but I think you need the, yeah.
Okay. So I'll call it light monitor, time monitor. You can run it on a schedule as well, every minute, every 5 minutes, etc., but also in different regions. So I could say I want to check from the US East, but also Europe, which is where I am. And I'll create that uptime monitor. And then kind of start, oh, did I add a space there? Oh, here. Let's see.
Or end.
Oh, or end. Good catch. Okay. Okay, so now I have this new type of monitor here, and you can see the difference on the left-hand side there. The normal monitor, collection back monitor, there's nothing there. The uptime one has this little arrow there. So it's going to run every minute, and I can't trigger it manually, this one. So we'll get back to it in a second. The other thing I want to show you, again, in the monitoring, first, you have this view of runs directly from here. So I can see it run. I can also run this one manually, and I see all of these. I can add the uptime monitor I just created to this view. So I have this single dashboard, and I can see it already run once, and it is up.
Oh,
so
surprised. Okay.
Average response time of 736 milliseconds, so good. But this little, the last thing on this page is this integrations here. I mentioned I'm not going to demo most of them because credentials, but I happen to have like a random Slack that is a demo one that I can use for anything. So I'll go ahead and connect it to Slack. So that's mine. I'll post the results to general. Hello.
You didn't review the terms.
I reviewed them before.
Okay.
Promise. Cool. So now I have this. So I'll give a nickname and I'll say Slack monitor Postman. I'll send all the results from my Taro monitor, and it's already sent to general. So I could notify for any monitor run or just when there's failures and it's success. There's a success again. Let me pull up Slack now. So now if I run it again, just give it a sec. Just bring in Slack. So this is my Slack. You can see I just got a notification. So this is one of the integration. I use Slack because it's very visual and easy to do. All the other integration work the same, but instead of sending the data to Slack, it may send it to your existing APM like New Relic, maybe Datadog, whichever you use. And there's a bunch of them that you can see here: Ops, Jenny, Kin, status page, etc. So yeah, that's the monitoring side.
Yeah, every time I look under the test deployments or monitoring tabs, I see new integrations that the engineering team has built. So that's exciting. If you don't see your favorite APM or whatever tool you're using, like chances are there's a feature request in for it. You can find it on our GitHub issues and upvote it. I think the monitoring and the new uptime monitors is very, very easy. You saw how easy it was to set up that uptime monitor. And previously, I did the same thing, but manually. I would create a collection with a single endpoint, write a test that says, like, did I get back a 200 okay? And then schedule it. And then at the time, you could only do it as often as every 5 minutes. But this, you can do it as often as every minute. So you can say, like, are you still alive? Are you still alive? And I mean, it's perfect because I have services that I want to make sure are up.
Yeah, and you can, as I mentioned, there's also the region side of things. So this for now shows a summary, but if I were to switch from region and refresh, you can see you could have different regions and see that it's up in all these different regions as well. Cool. So actually just mentioned the test, how you would do like before the uptime monitor, you would generate a collection, which we now have like already generated here. Go in each of these endpoints, add the test, which is check that it's 200. I'm gonna do a couple of these, and you'll understand the reason why after. I can't say too much, but go.
How come you're not adding a collection level test?
Because I need a lot of changes to happen to demo.
Got it. Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, ideally I would have gone here and then added a test at the collection level. So one of the things we see in that collection, there's a variable here at the collection level, which means I can call all of these requests and get a response from it with my test results. But as we saw in the definition here, we actually have two servers, one which is the production one and one which is the local server. So how do I switch from one to the other? If you've done anything with Postman before, you're probably yelling environment at your screen. So let's go ahead and work with environments. So first things first is let's remove this variable from the collection level. And now what do we see in here? Well, you can see this now more highlighted. So there's a background that's red.
Oh, that's nice.
And there's this prompt that says this isn't resolved. And you can add a new variable from here. So before you had to first notice that it wasn't resolved, and then you had to go and fix it yourself. But now I have this little, if I can click on it, this little prompt. So I can say, I'm going to create base URL. I'm going to give it a value. So I'm going to give it this value. And I can choose the scope. So there's no environment selected. So I probably should have done that before, which is create an environment for it. So let me create an environment, which is going to be, as soon as it comes, it's going to be production. Okay, so going back to here, I can say add new variable, value being, I did not select it. I'll get there. Nice. Okay, so I'm setting a variable. Now, because it is selected here, it's resolving. I could send a request again and get a random card. Let me close my tabs.
And you selected the active environment in the dropdown on the right, but my new favorite way of selecting an environment is straight from the environment as you're editing it with that little check mark. Yeah.
So one of the things we can do here, and to kind of show the difference between this, is we mentioned we need two environments. Instead of recreating a brand new one of the other feature we've added is forking environment. So you might be familiar with forking in the Git workflow, or just with collections, because we've added for a while that you were able to fork collections like this. But now you can do the same with environment. So I'll go ahead, create a fork of this one, and I'll call it, doesn't matter. I'll put it in that same workspace. I guess if I was in a real dev environment, I would have done the other way. I would have created the dev before and then forked it to production to update. It's not wanting me to create it.
I would have not named it Arlemy. I would have named it like staging or something, or development.
Yeah, I was gonna rename it anyway. So I have this fork, but I was gonna name it dev. And then here I can set my lookup host. And then, as just mentioned, you can switch from one to the other just by clicking here. So if I have this one, you can see it resolves to my production URL. And if I select my other environment, now it resolves to my local host. So I don't have anything running. This is not going to work. So you can actually see kind of send request because it doesn't exist. But if I switch back to production, then I get a response again.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about forking environments, and that's a good new enhancement.
So I see there's a question in the Q&A about conditionally sending a Slack message from monitor 2. That is typically something that you would do, as just mentioned, with the normal monitors. If you want to do any kind of customization, here I could add a test for instead of responses less than 200, make it responses less than 700, and then when this monitor fails, it's going to send a notification to Slack.
And if you want to conditionally send the Slack message, then you would just do like an if-else statement. And the way you conditionally send the Slack message is using Postman set next request to control the workflow. So you wouldn't, or you would or wouldn't call that last Slack notification webhook.
Cool. So I think that was more or less the first part of the things that I wanted to demo. There's been a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to go through them one by one, kind of walk through what we've done. The first one was creating an API. And what was new here is that we have actually integrated with GitHub. And we could have chosen any other thing, Bitbucket, Azure repos, etc. We chose GitHub. So now we have this Git integration, and I can pull changes, I can push changes, etc. We saw that we now have this documentation that's automatically generated, which is schema-backed documentation. And it's more so like a producer view. You don't get the code snippet, etc. You can see the endpoints, the headers, the parameters, etc. We then saw that now the API builder includes like many parts of the API lifecycle, documentation, test, deployments, and monitoring. That includes connecting your CI/CD pipeline directly in Postman and seeing the results show up there. AWS API gateway integration, so you would be able to deploy that same API we have here directly to AWS, and also be able to monitor it, or like you see what's happening from there. And speaking of monitors, we saw quite a few things here. One of them was the uptime monitor, which is a very simple API up or not up monitor. You just put a URL and it tells you it is up. And so far, Joyce's API is pretty good. 100% SLA is very good. And an okay average response time. And we also saw that you can integrate third-party tools here as well. And we integrated Slack directly with that monitor we created. If you integrate others, they would all add up here, and you can reconfigure them from here. I could also delete the integration from that menu. Then we move to a collection. And what did we look here? We show that if you remove variables, or if you have nothing selected, you now have like this more visible unresolved variable with this prompt. So you can add variable. And we then saw that you can fork environments the same way you can fork collection, etc. Cool.
And I will say that we spent a lot of time on the API builder. And when we say API builder, it just means like what's under the APIs tab in the left sidebar. So that lifecycle is, do you mind clicking on one of the versions? That lifecycle, oh my gosh. Excuse me. That lifecycle that Arlemy was talking about, the API producer lifecycle, you can see it here in those tabs going across the top. So there's the defining, documenting, test, deployments, monitoring. And what Arlemy's demo was API first, starting with the API schema and then generating a collection, documentation collection, or like what test collection or whatever. However, you can also be creating your collections just like you normally would, and then associate it with a schema. So the word's not backwards compatible, but it's flexible to accommodate whichever workflow you're choosing to adopt.
Oh, and one of the new features I forgot to remind you all about is that we support OpenAPI 3.0, but also 3.1 now, all the way down to 1.0 and these other protocols as well. And you can also see these two ones at the bottom, protocol 3 and 2, which leads me to a quick poll question that I'm going to prompt now. Let's see how much you know about Postman. So quick question for you all. Which one of these protocol does Postman support? API, API one. So does Postman support REST APIs? Does Postman support GraphQL APIs? Does Postman support WebSocket APIs? And gRPC APIs?
Is this a trick question?
It might be a trick question. It might not. So I'll just give everyone a chance to answer from your experience with Postman and from what you know. And then we'll go through some or all of this.
And it depends on what your definition of support is.
Yeah. I guess the definition would be, are you able to test or at least call these APIs with Postman?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give it another 10 seconds. So again, REST APIs, GraphQL APIs, WebSocket APIs, and gRPC APIs. And the results so far are like very much how I expected. Okay, so I'm going to stop the poll now. But 100% of the people who voted know that Postman support REST APIs. Fair enough. We that's what Postman was built on. 90% know that GraphQL APIs are also supported. Then WebSocket API is a bit less. We have like about 80% of people that think Postman support WebSocket. And then when it comes to gRPC, it's less than 50% I think Postman supports that. It was a bit of a tricky question. We actually support all of them. So I'm just going to spend maybe 5 minutes or so.
Surprise!
Going through all of them. So REST APIs, I might just skip that one because we've just done that with that collection. This is a REST API. I can call it not the dev one, the production one, and I can see the response, etc. We mentioned GraphQL. So let me create a new request, and I'm just going to go like request per request. If any of you is familiar with Rick and Morty, they actually have an API, which is Rick and Morty API of GraphQL /GraphQL. And if you wanna play along with it, you can actually just go to this repository. I'm going to put that in the chat because I have it handy. So that's a whole collection that has like both REST and GraphQL. Should I just fork it directly? Probably be easier.
Why not?
Yeah. So okay, I'll limit dev fork. I'll put in what's in Postman. It's probably easier than like creating it from scratch. This one. And you can see it finished here, but because it's all live data, I can have it here now. So as I mentioned, there's the REST APIs. Don't really care about this one. What we want to demo is the GraphQL one. So most of you knew we supported GraphQL. The reason why I talk about GraphQL is because we now support GraphQL introspection. Until now, what you had to do, you had to find the GraphQL schema somewhere, import it in Postman, and then add it as a schema and link it to your API. Now, what we're able to do, just from here, you can see it fetched the schema directly from that endpoint, that /GraphQL endpoint. There's already an example here. Let's remove that. Let's have a look at it. So that's, for those of you who are not familiar with GraphQL, this is a typical GraphQL query. You say what you want, the different query parameters that you want. So for example, here we're getting characters, the second page, and we filter only the characters that have the name Rick. And then part of the results, we're looking to get the name. But now what I'm able to do, without having to link anything, I can trigger autocomplete here. So I'm pressing Control and space, or Command and space if you're on Mac. And I can see all the other options that are available. So I could say, I want to see, I'm guessing this might be the episode where it's in. Let's see. Or the gender. What else could I get?
Species.
Species. Okay. So I've added these two, and now I can run that, and I'll get the same thing for each of them. So I can see all the Rick characters, the gender of it, and the species. So this one's a robot, this one's a human, this one is unknown, but we all know it's a pickle. And mostly humans. So yeah, this one's new. I think we've added it a couple months back as well. And it's not we've not really advertised it, but you're now able to get GraphQL introspection. So it makes it much easier to query GraphQL APIs from Postman.
Yeah, because you don't need to know anything about how the data is formatted. I didn't even know that shortcut. You did control
space.
Control space.
I believe on Mac it may be command space. I'm not entirely sure though. It might also be control space.
I always just started typing slowly, but especially if you don't know how the data is formatted, you just don't know what the data is. So then you could just build your query using autocomplete. That's really nice.
And then going down the list of protocols that some people didn't believe we supported, we have WebSockets. So for this one, I can click new and click new WebSocket. I kind of spoiled the next one as well here, but let me start with WebSocket. So I'm going to grab it's an eco WebSocket API. I'm not going to spend too much on this. We've had that for a little while now. So you can connect to that server, compose a message, and just say, let's say I'll make it JSON. Message. Just make sure it's highlighted correctly in JSON, and then I can send this. And you can see my message that goes out to the server, and then the server that echoes it back to me. That's WebSocket. We've added a few things that weren't there before. So you have like parameters you can set, you have like settings, etc. But you're now able to set it to a collection. So you can create a collection for async APIs, and then save it to it. And then now I'm able to like document my request. I can say how to use it, etc. Pretty straightforward. The last one we had in the list was
just before you move on, is the collection type the same for HTTP as it is for WebSockets?
No. So for now we have two different types of collection: one for async protocols and one for sync protocols. But eventually we'll merge them. But for now you can't have both type in the same collection. So the last one was one that most of you believed we did not support, which is gRPC. So I'm going to go ahead again and create a gRPC request.
What?
It's been around for a little while, maybe, I don't know, 6 months maybe. Let me get another one of these gRPC URL. And so I personally don't know much about gRPC, but one of the things that Ian actually just posted in the chat is that we support server reflection. So I just demoed GraphQL introspection, which is, I don't know much about this API, I don't know what it returns, but because I grabbed this schema, I can just go through it and create something. The same way here, I don't actually know what this API offers, but we've added server reflection recently, so I can select this. And the same way, it's going to go and pull all the data from that server, and it's going to tell me all the methods this gRPC API has. So for example, the same way, I'm going to go very easy. I'll just go for say hello, and it tells you this one is one-to-one. If I went for lots of greetings, you can see there's like one outgoing message, many incoming messages. But then again, I don't really know how to use it. If I click invoke, it's just going to tell me hello, no name. So what I can do, I can just generate an example message, and that's again like pulled from the server reflection. So if I click that, it's going to generate some random JSON here. That is what is needed. I might just replace that with and invoke it again, and you can say hello RDB. So the same way, if I select lots of replies and generate an example message, now you can see I send it once, and then the servers send me back many replies in a very short amount of time. But yeah, server reflection in a nutshell. I don't need to know anything about this API. I just get all the info directly from the server. And then last thing is I'm able to send that request the same way to this async API collection. And again, I can add documentation, etc., for other ones to consume. Cool. We have looked at all the protocols, all the API types we support. So REST API, GraphQL, WebSocket, gRPC. You may be aware that other types out there. We don't support them quite yet, but there's more coming. That's what I can say. And then we're 10 minutes to the end of the webinar, so I want to give some time to for some question or maybe some observations. Let me see. Joyce, do you have any comments so far, or should I finish with the what's coming up next?
I do want to get to what's coming up next, but just TLDR, just really short nutshell summary. What's the difference between introspection and reflection? Between GraphQL introspection and, oh gosh.
And server reflection.
Server reflection. Are they both schema based?
That's a very good question. The GraphQL introspection is schema based. The gRPC server reflection, I know so little about it that I wouldn't be able to say. I'm assuming it is. And that's probably the reason why we have this type of API, which is protobuf. But that's a wild guess.
Because if you go back to the gRPC call, or I don't even know what you call it, it does say EG, like generate example message down on the there. So I'm wondering if it's examples. So like in OpenAPI, you can have you can sketch out examples of requests and responses, and then you can use that to like generate mock servers in a collection and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering.
I think we're pretty much on it because I can see here the ways you can do is import the protobuf definition or use server reflection. So I'm assuming server reflection is just making that protobuf definition available through the server, like through the URL instead of. So yeah.
Yeah, figuring it out live.
Cool. Let me go back to the slides quickly and go full screen. I'm going to go back to demo something quickly, but hopefully you learned some of the new features. Hopefully some of them were useful to you, and even better, maybe you'd start using some of them or talk about them to people around you. But that was what came out in the last quarter or so. We also have stuff that are coming up next. So I'm going to mention a few. There's many more, but a few that I wanted to highlight was these two. The first one is bulk actions on collection. So if you're doing anything in Postman, if you want to delete things as a group, if you want to move things as a group, you will be able to do it. I don't know. I have a poll for that. And this one is going to be, let's see. So the question is, would you like a sneak peek of that one?
Is this a trick question?
Well, this one is pretty straightforward. And I think we're getting...
It's a sneak peek because it's not out yet, right?
It is not out. Yeah. So this one is not available yet. We actually have it in beta testing in Postman, in the Postman team. So yeah, okay. I think I don't need to leave that poll going for longer. We have 100% of yes. So let me go ahead and I won't want too many. Okay, so
ooh.
I'm already in my personal workspace because that's the Postman team. I don't want to share anything big that I shouldn't be sharing. So now, and I can actually compare if I was in here and I wanted to select several things. Oh, it actually works in here. There we go. I can just demo it here. Let's say I want to delete all of these or move them to a new folder. Let me create a folder, and it's going to be cards demo. Now I can select all of these and just move them to this folder. So that's pretty handy. Also, I've done quite a bit of stuff on that workspace. Maybe I just want to delete it all. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this and clear it up. It's gone. Revert. No more. It's all gone. So yeah, if you've done anything, I was actually going to show it with the I could revert it, but it's fine. I was going to show it with this one because I have a lot of stuff that I wanted to delete. But what I've done at the collection level, I could just go for like single request here. I can cut them, duplicate them as well, delete, etc. I'm just going to do these
actions.
ones. Bulk actions.
So we have a question. When will this be released from Atul?
Let me. I don't know. So I gave you a sneak peek. I can tell you it's going to be really soon. I don't want to commit to any date.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people are asking for this, and I'm one of the person that's probably the most excited about this getting released. I'm going to use it every other day or every day. So it's coming out soon. You can expect it. Hopefully, it's gonna save a lot of time for a lot of Postman users. So that was the first one. I don't have a sneak peek for the second one, so I don't have a poll for it. But we have an improved UX for mock servers. So if you're doing anything with mock servers, you'll have a better way to create them, to handle the type of response you want to get, to handle the response matching, etc. More integrations, I think that's a given. As you've seen at the very start with the API platform landscapes, there's tons of stuff in there, and we want to integrate with as much as we can, if not all. So expect more integrations to come every so often. And I'm sure in the next webinar like this one, we'll have more to demo and others. So if you need to learn more, there's this link, which I probably have handy to post in the chat, or someone else can post it in the chat. We try to keep a public roadmap up to date. It's not always like very much up to date, but it's the closest thing you'll get from like what's coming up. So go to that link and you'll be able to check what's next in the roadmap. I think that's about it. Some additional resources for you before you leave. Postman Space Camp, you are actually attending a Postman Space Camp, but it's a bit of a different one because we're doing that's not the correct link choice, I think. Should be, yeah, go.postman.io/
Oh.
Yeah. So Postman Space Camps, these are webinars. You can find things about API first, things about API testing, etc. They're all an hour, mostly like instructor-led, and we kind of walk you through these different workflows. But you'll find all of the information there. 30 days of Postman for developers. It's a 30-day challenge. We teach you about different features of Postman, and you might also learn some stuff new there, but also a badge that shows that you've learned something new in Postman. Community forum, if you have any random questions about Postman use cases, if you want to talk about what you're building with Postman, if you're talking about Postman yourself and you want to promote your own event there, that's the right place to do it. And then Postman Answers, I mentioned it at the start. It's a Postman public workspace where you can find answers to some workflows in Postman. And I think it's going to be, I'll show it quickly. If you just search for Postman Answers, you'll find a bunch of collections and also some people that you can say hi to, how to ignore specific tests, how to count the length of a response, like some quick things you might be trying to do in Postman. You can just go there and you'll find the right way to do it. Joyce, do you have any event you want to call out?
I do, and the Postman roadmap link isn't working. So if you wouldn't mind posting it, that would be nice. Yeah, so I have 2 upcoming events. Tomorrow, we have our regular live stream at the same time of day. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about dynamic rendering. So web clients like Postman, LinkedIn, GitHub, a lot of times you're trying to, it's like for web scraping or accessing data programmatically through a website. You're not sure, how do I scrape this website? How do I collect this content off this website? And it's really kind of tricky for client-side rendered apps. So we're going to talk about that. And then, okay, maybe not web scraping, but like, for data, programmatic data collection. I don't know what the word is. And then we do have an event coming up for my San Francisco peeps. We have an in-person workshop in San Francisco on June 23rd. So if somebody wouldn't mind dropping a link to that registration page, it's about API first. So you'll learn a little bit about Postman and how to do API first in Postman, but it's really about OpenAPI, designing APIs. We'll have guest lectures from Stripe and Twitter showing us how do these organizations think about scaling APIs, designing APIs, that kind of thing. So I'm excited for in-person events, and we will have some pretty neat swag for it too.
And you can find all the details on the Spacecamp page. Yeah.
All the details on the Spacecamp page. And I almost forgot, especially like if you're not like all day, don't care about that. We do have an SF meetup as well the evening prior. So June 22nd, it'll be at the Postman office.
Cool. So we have 3 minutes left. 3 minutes for you to provide us some feedback or ask any other questions. I see there's still a question in the Q&A from Atul. I believe we've answered that one about conditionally sent Slack messages from monitors. We showed how to add a test, and then we talked about how you can create a workflow from that. So if you have any other questions, post them now. Otherwise, I'm going to post the URL to provide some feedback in the chat, so you have all access to it.
And while Arlemy is posting that, there's if you're sad that you're not in San Francisco or won't be here for these events, we do have a couple other events planned around the world. I know we have a meetup in Bangalore coming up. I think we'll be in New York City in July sometime. So there's a couple, you know, events planned.
Cool. Not seeing any questions. That's a win in my book. It means you've understood everything we show. And again, hopefully you learned some stuff new. When in Bangalore, I think it's end of June, but I don't have an exact date. Probably 30th of June, around this time. We'll be blasting it in all our socials. Sorry. Yeah. So if you follow Get Postman on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, etc., it's definitely going to be shared there multiple times, so you won't be able to miss it. Anything I'm missing, Joyce, before we close?
No, just please do provide your feedback. We just dropped the link in the chat. Please do go to the tiny URL link and let us know what you want to hear about, because almost from month to month, we curate the demos, we curate the learning sessions based on your feedback. So please answer that survey. It's pretty quick.
Great. In that case, thank you all for joining. We'll see you either tomorrow at the live stream, next week at another Spacecamp, maybe in San Francisco, maybe in Bangalore.
Worldwide.
Worldwide. You all have a good day and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.